Eira Brewer has been helping people manage the impact of dyslexia through strategy coaching since 2016. Through working with adults who have dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, and other associated neurodiverse conditions, Guy has developed a wealth of knowledge and skills in this area. With 25 years of experience in the UK education sector, learning to listen to people, recognising their concerns and working with them to solve problems, Guy has brought a great deal to his role as an independent strategy coach. But it's not all work. Guy is keen on the outdoors. Having grown up in East Anglia, he enjoys the landscape of the Brecon Beacons and the valleys of South Wales where he lives with his family now, and loves to walk his dog Martha and ride his mountain bike. Believing that well-being is rooted in healthy living, Guy combines his love of exercise with an equal passion for healthy cooking and eating. In addition to coaching, Guy also delivers webinars and presentations, conducts workplace needs assessment for adults with dyslexia in the workplace, and delivers awareness-raising sessions. Guy's most recent public appearance was at the 2022 Dyslexia Show, held at the NEC Birmingham at the end of March. Guy spoke at length about his perspective as a dyslexia coach, how he entered the profession, and his current experiences in supporting adults with dyslexia and other related neurodiverse conditions in the workplace. You can find Guy on YouTube, where he has his own channel full of tips, interviews, explanations, and information, or on social media under his brands Positive About Neurodiversity and Positive About Dyslexia. Guy is an enthusiastic networker and is always happy to chat. You can book some time to talk with him through all the usual channels: text, phone, email, direct messaging, Calendly, or why not join him for a walk or a bike ride on the mountains?
Hello and welcome to our webinar. This is the third in our series, so hopefully you've already seen the webinar we did about revision tips and exam technique, and hopefully now you're ready to move on and think about transition, whether this be from primary school to secondary school, within secondary school, Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 4, or GCSEs to A-levels. You might be moving from secondary school to further education or higher education. And some of these tips and things that we're going to talk about today might also be helpful in the workplace too. So as always, we have some great acronyms to throw around. We have got the PowerPoint slides downloadable so that you can use those and follow along or use them to reflect. We also have a one-page prompt, which should be helpful on reflection as well. So we would recommend that you watch the webinar first and then re-watch it when it goes onto our YouTube channel and use those prompts. I'm sure that there will be lots of useful tips throughout. And please visit Guy's channel, Guy's YouTube channel, Guy Brewer, for more hints and tips and useful videos. He's also on Instagram, LinkedIn, he has a Facebook community page, and his handle is Positive About Neurodiversity. Thank you for joining us again. Welcome, Guy, to your own webinar.
Well, isn't this amazing? This is just the best, isn't it? To be introduced to your own thing. And but things have switched around a little bit because I'm going to do most of the talking today and give Eira a bit of a rest. But I'm sure she will have some useful comments to throw in and bring the whole thing alive. So this is, as Eira said, this is about transition, and it's all about moving on and preparing for that. So let me get started with my presentation, which is coming up here now. Okay, so you might have seen this before. Let me see if I can move the slides on. Come on. There we go. Transition between education settings says it all. So the thing with transition is it's all about managing change. Whether you're in primary school or secondary school or wherever you are, if you've been there for a while, you're settled, you know the staff, they know you know the place, you have all your strategies sorted, you've got your resources, you know where they all are. The thing about transition is that you're going somewhere different. It's about managing change. So you're going to be going to a different location. And for a lot of people with dyslexia, that can be a disorientating thing, especially if you're going to a brand new, huge place from primary school to secondary school. It's a big change, and certainly from secondary school to university to a whole new campus, the whole location thing can be complicated and daunting. Then, of course, there's different teaching and learning styles and expectations in a new environment that you have to prepare for. As I said, if you're in a place where you know the teachers and they know you, that's fine. But if you're going somewhere new, you don't know what's going to be expected. It's going to be a little bit of the unknown. And how you're going to deal with that, because you want to be ready to learn when you arrive. You don't want to be worried and anxious about how things are going to be. Then there's all the other people. What are they going to be like? There are going to be lots of people you don't know. How are you going to feel about being dyslexic in a bunch of people you don't know? Are you going to tell them? How are you going to tell them? That's something to think about too. The structure could be different as well. And a number of people who have dyslexia and ADHD have told me that when they were in secondary school, that was fine because of the rigidness of the school timetable, helped them to focus in lessons. As they went into A levels and had more free time, that was harder. And at university, where they were the ones who had to organize their day and manage the time component, get all their assignments ready at the appointed time, massive struggle. So structure can be an important thing for a lot of people. And if it's not automatically there, you need to think about how to create it. Access to the decision makers, this is particularly important as you grow older, because if you're the person who needs to ask for assistance or to speak to people in authority about anything, then you need to know who they are and where they're going to be. If you're the parent of a child going for example, from primary to secondary, then you may have been able to get to the teachers easily to speak to them, or email them easily to speak to them about the needs of your child, or to the head teacher or the Senko. Suddenly going to a comprehensive school where there are a dozen or more teachers and the head of year and the Senko and deputy heads and assistant heads and the head teacher, suddenly it's a whole different ball game. So you may still want to be involved in supporting your child and communicating regularly with people, but things change in different settings. So you have to be prepared for that and do a bit of research to find out who is going to be the person to or the people to speak to, and how you're going to do that. And the last thing here is the levels of responsibility, isn't it? For the learner, how much is down to you? And obviously, as you get older, it's more on you. You have to take responsibility for finding out what you have to do, for being sure of what the homework and assignment tasks are. And so being able to take that on board is very important. And certainly if you're looking at university, apprenticeship, or workplace learning, it's all going to be on you. So sometimes the combination of all these things can be overwhelming. And if you don't plan for it, then things can be tough. So obviously, if you've seen any of my videos, you'll know one of my big points is about preparing and being ready for things that are going to happen. So this is the purpose of this webinar, to help you do that. Oh, hello. I don't know whether they heard that. Dogs in the background getting a bit excited, but we will move on. So what are the risks? The risks are of not handling transition well are uncertainty, and that can prevent you from being ready to learn, basically, a point further on down the list. Fear of the unknown. If you don't know what to expect, then that is not going to put you in a good frame of mind to learn well. Being overwhelmed by too much change is not, again, going to make you feel positive about learning and in a great place. It leads to anxiety. Again, that's not going to help you perform at your best, because the purpose of all this learning is to not only build your knowledge, but to do the assessments, get the qualifications, be able to show your capabilities, your intelligence and knowledge, and you want to be able to do that to the best of your ability as smoothly as possible. So not being ready to learn at any point is going to be bad. And there's the risk of underperformance and ultimately, if it comes to the worst, of dropping out. So all these things want to be avoided by suitable preparation. So moving on, transition planning needs some careful thought.
Definitely.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment, chipping in there rather well. So we've got these amazing acronyms. Now is the time to yell. Now is the time for a strop. What does all this mean? What does all this mean? Well, yell, you, environment, learning and location. Okay, as you probably will have gathered by now, I am a big fan on you being clear on what your personal challenges are, what the traits and characteristics of your dyslexia and any other associated neurodiverse conditions are, so that if needs be, you can explain to others so that you can get the support that you need, so that you can be confident going into any situation, that you have a strategy or a plan to deal with it. So something like this mind map is a really helpful start to get you thinking about what your challenges are, so you are equipped, because remembering stuff can be difficult. If you're going into lectures or lessons, and you know there's going to be a lot of information thrown out, how do you deal with that? Okay, you need to have a plan for that. So you need to know, before even having a plan comes about, that it's going to be a challenging situation. And you probably will know that, but get it down on paper, get it organized, so that when you are talking to people about how you learn best, whether that's teachers, lecturers, student services, or anybody in a supportive role, you can explain to them quite clearly and succinctly the challenges that you face, and that will help you discuss how to capture the information, how to do the learning the best that you can with their support. So know yourself.
I've got a few things to say here.
Go for it.
Just looking at the mind map, and some of these points are like really linked to what you've already mentioned with the change in environment or the change in structure. So people with dyslexia and associated conditions can have difficulties telling the time. So when you have a new timetable or a new routine, and you have different lunch breaks and different morning break times and things, maybe that might throw people off. So it's important to come up with a strategy, or to be prepared to know when things end and begin. Luckily, there's a bell at school, but at university you're not prompted so much. Also, getting lost easily can be a trait for lots of people. So finding where you need to be beforehand might be a good idea. And other things that people might not necessarily realize are a result of their dyslexia are even things like copying off the board. So if you're having difficulty with that, then strategies might be able to be put in place by teachers and so on. So yeah, it's so important that you understand yourself, what works for you, what your difficulties are, and to explore it yourself first, because there's lots of things that people don't even realize are a result of dyslexia and associated conditions.
Absolutely. And you can be pretty sure that other people won't know all this stuff. So they will make all sorts of assumptions about you, which may not be accurate, and that's not very helpful. So lots of people with dyslexia, as you say, have difficulty telling time, measuring time, managing time, and yet you will be expected to be in certain places at certain times. So you need to be prepared for that by having, you know, your phone with the time on. Your phone's always got to be charged, isn't it? Or you need to have a watch, or you need to have a friend who can help you with that. So knowing that these things are issues is so important.
Definitely.
So so this is the why in YELL. Be clear on your characteristics and think about them in terms of going to a new place. How will they affect you, and what can you do in advance? Then we have E for environment. So what do you need to be able to learn at your best? Okay, so I talk to a lot of people in my role as workplace coach, and I hear a lot of different information from people about the type of environment that suits them. Some people like to have background noise to help them concentrate. Some people like to have absolute silence. People like different levels of lighting. Some people like it warm. Some people like it cold. Some people like to sit with their back to a wall, or some people like to sit near the door. Some people have certain preferences for the furniture that they use to sit on. Do you need to be near to electric sockets? This all seems like a lot of detail, but it's important that you know what works best for you, because if you can't concentrate in a lecture or a lesson because the lighting gives you headaches, or it's too cold, or it's too hot, or you're feeling anxious because you're feeling exposed in the position that you're seated, then you're not going to be taking in the information, you're not going to be learning at your best. And this is all about, isn't it, how you can learn at your best.
Yeah.
And possibly what's happened at the moment in your current situation, if you've been there for a while, whatever that is, however old you are, you'll have kind of got a happy medium, or even the ideal situation that works for you, because you will have been there for maybe several years, and everyone will be used to you, you'll be used to them, and you'll know how the lighting works best for you, and the temperature, and so on and so forth. So when you're going to somewhere new, it's important that you're not caught out by these things, so that you can get to your lessons or lectures early and get the best place for you, so that you can be able to learn at your best. So here we have this great acronym CIA, which someone reminded me of the other day, which is marvelous. It's what can you control, what you have influence over, what will you have to accept. So some things you can control completely, and so you can change them to suit you. And it may be, for example, if you're going into a lecture, if you get there early, you can sit in exactly the place that suits you. But that doesn't always happen to be the case, does it? Sometimes other people could be there. There may only be things that you can have an influence over. And so that means you can't control it completely, but you have some influence over the situation. So in that environment where you are not able to sit in your ideal place, maybe a teacher or lecturer is aware that you need to be at a certain part of the room, and they can find a place for you there. So it's not completely ideal, but they are on your side and can help you find a better place. The accept bit comes in where you have no influence and you have no control, and it may not be ideal, but you've just got to accept that in that situation, you can't change it, and you're going to have to deal with it as it is. So the point of this is that if you can look at a situation and ask yourself, can I control this? Can I have some influence over it? Or am I just going to have to accept it? It will reduce the stress and the overwhelm by enabling you to look at it objectively and maybe plan some changes for the future. But it's a great little thing to remember, because you can apply it to lots of different situations. CIA.
Definitely. And I'm sure that you will mention this later on, and you already have briefly, but it's really important to have those connections and those relationships with people who will be able to help in these situations. There are things that you might not be able to, that you might have to accept to begin with. For example, if a teacher puts you in a certain seating plan, but if you build a connection and have a relationship with the teacher or whoever, then they might be able to help you to have control or influence over it instead.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it may be a thing that takes a bit of time. You can't do it instantly, but it's definitely worth having those 3 steps in your mind.
Yeah.
It just works for life. It's not just about
it does.
It works for everything. So the L in YELL, the first one, is location. So if you're going to somewhere new, where is it? You know, you've got to be sure where it is. You've got to ask yourself, how are you going to get there? Because you may have to get there on your own, or if you're lucky enough, maybe you're going to be taken there. And but how will you get back? And if, for example, there is a lengthy journey on public transport that's involved, or a long walk or cycle ride or drive, then what impact will that have on you? So again, it's brings us down to this, my favorite phrase at the moment, being ready to learn. If you can give some thought as to how you're going to get there, then you can plan the time for that so that you arrive comfortably. And because, you know, you've got to take into account the weather, and also how will you get back, because no doubt at the end of the day there'll be work you have to do, so you need to factor all these time scales in. Then how will you orient yourself around the site? Dyslexia for a lot of people means a difficulty, but not everyone, a difficulty in finding your way around, and it can be easy to get lost or confused about where you are. So can you go for some trips in advance to have a look around the place? Can you get a map to look at? Can you study it somehow so that you are prepared? Are there other people who you can speak to who can tell you all about it? So this is all about some advanced planning and thinking about how you're going to manage that so that you don't find yourself lost on day one and panic-stricken and stressed out. So as much as you can do in advance is really worth it. Because what will you do if you get lost? You know, will you have your phone? Is there someone you can ring? Who will you go to? Who can help you if you need it? And again, this falls back on preparation. So should you go to, will there be a key point? Is there a reception that you can go to? How will you find help when you need it? So it needs a bit of a thought, a bit of strategy, and you need to talk to people about how to manage that. And once again, how will you contact them? So will you have a phone? Will you keep it charged? Have you got the numbers ready? This is all about planning and organization so that you haven't got to worry too much about moving around the place. You can concentrate on the learning. So this is why it's valuable to download these slides as PDF, so you can look through this stuff and you can draw up a plan to think about, how am I going to get there? How am I going to get back? What happens if I do get lost? Because you want to be relaxed, you want to enjoy your experience in your new location and get the most out of it.
I definitely think that saving numbers in your phone just in case is an excellent idea, because most of the time you won't need them, but if you do, it's such a relief that you have the number that you need.
Yeah, and I would say save the numbers with someone's name. And so it's clear, because if you're just looking at a load of numbers and you're panic stricken, then that is tricky. So you need to save your contacts so that you know who the people are who can help, and it's worth mentioning to them that you might need to call on them. Are they happy if you ring, if needs be? Because you want people to be prepared, don't you? And certainly for day 1 and day 2 and day 3, if you've got those people with their phones on just in case, certainly for younger people, then that will make you just feel a bit more relaxed. So this is all about planning, planning and planning. Sorry, did I cut you off there?
I was just agreeing with your excellent points.
You can do practice trips in many cases to these places and have a look around. And sometimes, you know, you can talk to the key people if they are student services or Senkos or people on reception, you know, whoever it is. If you've got friends and family who have been to those places before, speak to them, find out what their experience was, and if they've got any useful tips. Know the important places, you know, where to go if you need to. So, you know, like know where the toilets are and know where the offices of people who can help you are. So, and also obviously know what to do in an emergency. So what's the fire drills? If there are any particular processes that they have, you know, where do you go if you feel ill? Do they have a nurse? Do you go to reception? What do you do in these instances? So don't take it all on yourself. Discuss it with friends and family so that you have a clear idea for these tricky things, what needs to be done. And I know this isn't about the learning, this is about all the other stuff, but if you're confident with your transition to a place, with being safe there, and if anything happens, you know who can help you and what to do, that means when you are in your lessons and lectures, you can focus on learning without being anxious about this other stuff. So the second L of YELL is learning. How do you learn best? Okay, this is about learning styles. And some people I know, having spoken to people who've done university degrees, said they learn a great deal from YouTube and from talking to people, and much less from books and articles and journals. So knowing how you learn best when you go to a new education provider is useful, because if it turns out everything is going to be in print, then you can think about how you can find similar material in a way or in a format that is more comfortable to you. So maybe you like graphs, maybe you like stuff visually, then there's nothing wrong with asking teachers and lecturers if that is accessible. And just knowing how you learn best means you will be equipped to soak up the information and to turn it around and get it back out for assessment the most efficient way as possible, because this is all about doing well and learning the stuff and demonstrating your knowledge. So how will things be different from what you're accustomed to? That's something really worth thinking about. Will there be more responsibility for you? Will things have to be done in a different way? In which case, what do you need to do to learn about that kind of thing? And if you know that things are going to be done in a slightly different way, you can be prepared for that. It won't come as a shock. And if you have a shock, that can be unsettling. We don't want that. So these are important things to think about. How will your work be assessed? Will it all be exams? Will it be coursework? Will there be presentations? Will there be online forums? Learning about this stuff is important so that you can adapt to that. For example, people have said to me that they have found online forums can be quite challenging, where you're expected to contribute to the chat because it can be quite fast paced. And if you're typing something up and it's full of spelling mistakes, you don't want to expose that necessarily to other people. So maybe you type it into Word and then you've got to cut and paste it into the chat. Maybe things will have moved on by then. So how will you keep up? How will you contribute in a way that enables you to demonstrate your knowledge and your capabilities? Maybe they have accommodations for people with dyslexia for that kind of activity. It's something to inquire about and to think about and be prepared for. So give it some thought. Again, talk to people, look at the course information, or you can speak to people in charge, then you can find out these kinds of things so that, again, you're prepared to provide the information, show your capabilities comfortably without having to worry about the format. So, and this is similar with how will you record your work? Will you use writing, laptop, audio, etc.? There are loads of ways of capturing information. And for some people, they can write it quite easily. Some people like to capture ideas using dictation, and you can use Microsoft for that, or if you use Apple, they have lots of equivalent accessible methods on their devices. So think about how you like to capture your work, whether it's stuff that's being given out by lecturers or whether it's stuff that you are creating yourself. Be prepared and keep an open mind and have lots of options available.
I think as well, for lots of people, part of this preparation process might also be a learning process, because I know in schools they're much less likely to give out laptops or allow audio devices to be used for verbal explanations. In school, it's very much handwritten things. So finding out about what like assistive technology or what other options are there for recording can be a learning process, but a really valuable one. So it's really good to find out what other options there are that are different to what you currently do, if that kind of makes sense.
It does. And one of the things you may wish to consider is that if you're in school, in the daytime, you're expected to do everything through handwriting, except in IT lessons. But at home in the evening, if you've got laptops or computers, that gives you the facility to practice or to capture information through dictation and to have stuff read back to you, and to create mind maps rather than lists. You can develop your own techniques and skills in the freedom of your own home, and then, you know, if needs be, copy it out by hand into your exercise book. But for a lot of people, and I was talking to someone only today who was saying that when they are trying to write down their ideas, their handwriting slows them down. So that's frustrating. So by the time they finished a couple of ideas, then they've forgotten some of the other stuff that they thought about. But if you've got apps on your phone that are dictation apps, and there's plenty of them around, you can speak all your ideas out, capture them, and then sometimes you can email them to yourself. But if they're captured in print, then on your phone, then you can use that information, because you will have captured it verbally, and then you can, you know, if it's got to be handwritten, then you're going to have to copy it, which is a shame, but at least you've captured your ideas.
Yeah, there's lots of different strategies, and it's good to think about how you can apply the strategies that you already know work for you to this new learning environment.
So organizing and storing your work is important as well, because as you become more advanced in your education location, then great responsibility falls on you to manage that stuff. So if you're in primary school, often your work is kept in the classroom and you have your own drawer, so you haven't got to worry too much about it. But once you're in secondary school, you've got to have your books and you've got to have the right ones for the day. If you're in university and possibly A levels, then there's much more electronic stuff involved. So that means folders, files, backed up hard drive, stuff saved in the cloud. That's a lot of organization, because if you don't name your files in a suitable system or your documents so that you can retrieve them when you need to, you can end up being overwhelmed by having millions of documents all called today's date or whatever, document 1, document 2, document 3. So it needs some thought and some planning. You need to have folders. You need to have a system so that you can capture your information and find it. And because the stress of losing stuff is horrible. And especially when deadlines are looming and stuff's got to be given in, if you can't find that brilliant bit of writing that you did a couple of weeks ago, you're going to be so cheesed off and stressed. So got to be organized.
Something that we mentioned in the revision webinar was about color coordination. So just creating that extra link. If you have physical files and things that you're using, then using certain colors for certain subjects helps separate things as well.
Absolutely. Take responsibility, essentially, isn't it? And use what works for you in order to be in control of your information and your learning. And that will make your life ultimately better, because you haven't got to rely on other people looking after your stuff. But have a great system to start off with. Get other people to help you if needs be, because it can be overwhelming, but it's worth having a good system at the start. Otherwise, you've got to sort everything out halfway through and you've got hundreds of files. As I say, that's a job in itself. Who needs that? You don't. So it's as though I thought about this in advance. There is a lot to think about, but take your time. Do not let it overwhelm you. No, be calm, be calm. But maybe it's time to have a strop. Yes, indeed. And this is what strop stands for. Strategies. So you will undoubtedly have lots of strategies to manage the challenges of dyslexia. Maybe you need more. I've got loads on my YouTube channel, ideas for you to look at. There's lots of stuff out there on other people's YouTube channels as well about strategies to manage learning. Talk about it with other people. Color is a great thing. Breaking things down into small bits is a great thing. We've discussed some of this in previous webinars. Okay, you need to have strategies and you need to think, what strategy could I use to deal with this situation? Okay, so when things are happening and maybe you're not feeling in control, stand back, take a breath, think, what strategy can I use? Again, what technologies can you use? It's not just about dictation and text to speech. There are lots of apps you can get for organizing yourself and for time management. It's about using alarms and reminders and that kind of thing. If that's what you need, look into the technologies, Google the apps to see what there is out there to help you. Certainly if you're going to university, there will be lots of other people using these things. So talk about it, find out what other people use, what works for them. Similarly with resources, color is great, isn't it? Because it differentiates stuff. So much information is produced on white paper, black print on white paper, all looks the same. It's impossible to find stuff if you've got loads of it. Similarly with documents. So use resources to make things look different, so that will help you find them and help embed them in your brain more easily. And the last bit, the O and the P of the STROP, is other people. Collaborate with other people. Find out how they do things. Share your ideas. You will have lots of great ideas about how to manage the challenges that learning presents. And you may do that because you're dyslexic, but those strategies help for people, even those who are not dyslexic. They are great ideas. So talk to other people, work with them. Sometimes things like just agreeing to both study at the same time, even in your own home, separate from each other, but having that agreement, it's like a buddy system, helps focus and get jobs done when sometimes it's easy to procrastinate and not do it. So other people can provide accountability. So have a strop while I have a sip.
I think with other people as well, lots of the time, if you're you have an issue or you're thinking about a certain thing over and over again, you like limit the thoughts and ideas that you have. You don't think outside the box anymore because it's all your thoughts. Whereas other people might be able to solve a problem or give a really good suggestion that you would just never think of on your own. So collaboration, as you said, in all situations, whether it's primary school, secondary school, the workplace, university, college, like linking up and chatting with other people is really, really valuable.
Yep, and it sparks new ideas, doesn't it? So you bounce off other people. So take advantage of that. That's the joy, isn't it, of being in these settings. There's loads of other people and they have ideas and they spark new ideas in your mind. So your brain is amazing. Use it to make all transitions smooth, because there are always transitions. There may be some through education, but when you get into the world of work, you go from one workplace to another, whether you like it or not. Over a career of 30 or 40 years, you're bound to change. And a lot of what we have covered in this webinar applies to that situation as well. So there you go. If you've got any questions or queries, you can get Eira at this email address, or go to golexia.com, or you can get me at all the usual places: YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Download the downloadable content and use this stuff as a checklist if you are going through transition, or if you know other people who are, so they can be fully prepared. If you have found this useful, let us know. If you've not found it useful, let us know. And it's always great to have feedback so that we can improve and help other people. So thank you for watching. I would encourage you to watch it again and to think about, if you're going through the transition process, how this applies to you. Don't forget the Facebook page, because it's a community group. You can get into discussions about how other people have had this kind of experience and what they have done. So that's what a community is for. So thank you ever so much for watching our webinars.
Thank you.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.